As you can see from the slide pictured here, we have our head office in beautiful Jacksonville, Oregon, and Bellevue, Washington. Now, a little bit of housekeeping. All attendees are muted. If you have any questions, please feel free to use the questions tab that is provided. And with any investment firm, there is always the wonderful disclosures. So I'm going to go ahead and read this. The information, analysis, and opinions expressed herein are for general and educational purposes only. Nothing contained in this presentation is intended to constitute legal, regulatory, tax, accounting, securities, or investment advice, nor an opinion regarding the appropriateness of any investment, nor a solicitation of any type. Information obtained from third-party resources is believed to be reliable, but not guaranteed. All opinions and views constitute our judgments as of the date of writing and are subject to change at any time without notice. Fund disclosures. So I'm very excited for our presentation today. We have Stephen Adler and his daughter, estate planning and elder law attorney, Miss Barbara Adler West. Stephen and Barbara co-authored a wonderful book last year titled, When I Need Your Help, I'll Ask For It. But before I turn the presentation over to them, I would like to give you a little bit of their biography. So Stephen Adler left Nazi Germany in 1939 at age 8 to war-torn Great Britain. Later, his family reunited and he immigrated with his parents and brother to Chicago. Steve and his older brother were featured as Quiz Kids, a popular radio and television broadcast in the late 1940s. I have confirmed that Quiz Kids is on YouTube. In 1951, Steve married his high school sweetheart, Judy Weinberg. He completed his schooling and earned a PhD degree in chemistry at Northwestern University in 1954. Steve and Judy moved to Connecticut, where he began a career in industrial chemical research, and they raised 2 daughters. They retired to Seattle in 2000. Steve has been a speaker for the Washington State Holocaust Resource Center since then, teaching his history to the middle school students across the state and linking the lessons of past and current in humanity. Barbara Adler was born in Connecticut in 1957. She attended the public school and graduated from the University of Connecticut with a BA in English. English degree, nice. Same here. She moved to Seattle in 1982 and earned a law degree from Seattle University in 1989. Barbara has worked as an estate planning and elder attorney in the Seattle area since 1997. She is an inordinately proud single mother of 2 brilliant children, ages 25 and 27. In her spare time, Barbara designs and sews quilts and gardens any plot of dirt she finds. She enjoys social dance, plays guitar, ukulele, and is learning to play the violin. In her spare time, which doesn't really sound like you have much of, she manages her family's brood of cats. So with that said, I would like to turn over the presentation to Stephen and Barbara.
Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, and Barb, you going to start this thing? Or?
Well, sure, I'll start. My dad and I experienced the loss of my mom after a lengthy period of time with Alzheimer's disease, and then he was ill. When he recovered, we looked at one another and thought, what would we have done if, instead of being in a community where there was support for me and for my parents, they had in fact been living in their own home. I'm an elder law attorney, and I have worked for almost 30 years with people who dig in their heels and refuse to leave their homes. But at the same time, they're watching their own quality of life deteriorate. And so my dad and I decided that we could write, or maybe better said, should write a book about the fears that keep people from making decisions when that time is at hand.
So, yeah, anyway, so why we could write the book, we actually had 2 different kinds of credits. I get credits for being an old guy with lots of years as a spouse and a caregiver, and my daughter Barb gets credits for being an elder law attorney. So when we are talking about the situation that relates to seniors and whether they do or do not plan properly. We have two different ways of looking at it, and we cover them both. What we learned was that when you don't take action, that is taking an action, because not deciding not to do something makes your options shrink. When you don't do something, when you put off doing something, that doesn't mean that change will stop. As a matter of fact, change is a constant in all of our lives. The primary thing is that when you're older, it's tougher to cope with the change. And it isn't only that the aging process is more complex and more difficult for you. It's also, if you have a partner, of course, the partner's condition also comes into the picture, and we never know when we're younger, which one of the two of us is going to be the caregiver and who's going to be getting the care. And of course, it can also happen that both husband and wife can wind up needing some kind of help. And waiting, unfortunately, makes the emotional and physical costs go up. So deferring a decision is a bad idea.
We decided that there are myths that abound among senior citizens that keep them from believing that it's a viable option to relocate from independent living to some kind of a more, what we call congregate community, which is not a congregation, but a place where people live together. And we realized as we were discussing this that myths are a factor in our culture. We use myths with children to counter fears. There's the tooth fairy. Child might think, oh my gosh, all of my teeth are going to fall out, so we give them some money. We want to allow children an opportunity for wonder and for innocence, and so we have Santa Claus who delivers presents and is a source of wonder for many, many children for many years. When we get older, oh, now we have the myth of Prince Charming. He's going to come and rescue us and buy us the rose-covered cottage. And so these myths that we engage in they're not harmful. In fact, they are ways that we counter fear, anxiety, and the unknown. The difference with the senior myth is that they can really lead to disastrous consequences. Terrible decreases in your health and your ability to get health care, financial devastation, and even death. While we're talking about seniors, it's important to put our conversation in the broader context of what is happening with seniors in America today. We all know about the baby boom, the 76 million children born in the about 20 or 18 years post-war, 65.2 million boomers alive, retiring at the rate of $100,000 a day. And our life expectancy is going up. I hear now it's actually going down, but the most important factor on this page is the number of single-person households. When you're in a partnered relationship or you're living with an extended family, you can expect, if you're ill, that there's going to be some in-home help. There's going to be a much more significant challenge for all these people who are now living by themselves. Also wanted to talk a little bit about the reality of the vulnerability of seniors to abuse and exploitation. I sometimes think of living alone like this as akin to the stories of children who have nannies and are cared for in their homes alone. There is an opportunity for those people to be victims. When you're older, studies show that all of your systems slow down. It's not just that you can't hear as well or you can't see as well. Your thinking, your processing of information declines. This positivity bias relates a lot to the vulnerability of seniors to telephone scam artists. People will call you on the phone. You won't hear the fact that they're asking for money, but you're lonely, maybe you feel a little isolated, and instead you focus on the fact that this nice young man is calling you every day, and you really wish that your own son would do the same. The last slide I want to show you on this, and it's not to make everyone depressed, but it is only to be realistic in that families are unfortunately the leading exploiters and abusers of seniors. Everyone wants to stay at home and they want to be cared for by the people that they love, but the reality is many families don't have the skills. They have people, family members who are subject to all kinds of stresses of their own, addictions and other kinds of issues. So put in a position of access to money, they sometimes abuse the trust that they are given. And the sad fact is that 2/3 of the perpetrators of elder abuse are the spouses and children of the seniors.
So in the book that we have written, we talk about 5 different myths, and in our talk today, we'll cover 2 of them. Actually, they're numbers 1 and 5. But I want you to focus on each of them in turn and recognize what's going on. We'll talk more in detail about number 1 in a moment, but just take a look through the myths. Living in your own home until you die is a myth only because it is, in most cases, is not a viable option. Your own home is wonderful when you're young and you're out playing tennis, but when your body begins to break down and you begin to have a variety of other needs, that home could actually become a prison. Another one, number 3, having your family take care of you, that's a fine idea, but only a fine idea if your family, number 1, is capable of doing it. That is, they're able to take the time, but also, you know, are they there? Maybe they're in Arizona and you're in Connecticut. That isn't going to be much help to you. Managing your money, your financial affairs, a trusted person, that's a major issue, not easily managed. It can be done, but we know that many people in the family are the wrong people. And then Barb is going to take care of number 5. So let's go on to number 1, When I Need Your Help. Of course, that's the title of the book. A quick word of explanation. When we were first exploring what the title might be, we were referring to 5 senior myths. When Barb and I tried it out on various people, they would say, what is a senior myth? And she came up with this bright idea of putting one of the myths into the title. And when people hear it now, they laugh, and they laugh with good reason. So anyway, what's going on when you are Aging, of course, you are under the laws of almost every state. You are free to choose any lifestyle. You can, you have the option to do what you want, and it can be that you want to be a pack rat and live in a house filled with newspapers and canned goods, but only if you are seriously capable of making judgments about that. If this is something that is, that's part of a decline in your mental capacity, then you are becoming incapacitated, and you better not do it anymore. I bring this up because when you need help, and maybe you're not even capable of asking for the help anymore. And of course, let's do the next slide. I think you want to take a look. If you need help and you are looking for help within the family, you're going to be dealing with two kinds of issues. The first one, what we call soft issues. Soft issues are those that have an emotional context, and here we list quite a few of them. Of course, sons and daughters have been taught to do what the parent wishes, and when the children get older, they're still children, and in many cases, a son or a daughter can be 60 or 65 and not have the ability to advise the parent to do something other than what the parent wants. On the other hand, the senior is afraid of change, because change when you get older it is a trying thing. It causes anxiety, and then you have a situation of the husband and the wife who told each other when they were much younger and more capable, we will take care of each other when we get older. And that may not work anymore. And the final one is that the family members often fight about what the right decision is, because they've become those are ingrained ideas about what should happen. So these are soft issues. Let's talk about hard issues. These are things that can be quantified. And in the case of a senior, there are 5 areas that are listed there: eating, bathing, dressing, toileting, and transferring. And all of them can be measured, because you either are eating well or not, you are bathing or not, etc. And it's not only a question of whether the senior is getting these things, but are they getting them in the proper quantity, and are they getting them in the right quality? Are they adequate overall? So that leads us to what we do in each myth in the book. We not only examine what the implications of the myth are, but we feel that it's very important to provide tools to the caregiver. And in the case of myth number 1, the principal area has to do with powers of attorney, and Barb will talk about those.
We wanted to provide actual resources and help to caregivers. It doesn't make a difference to me. If you're dealing with your parents' myth, you still need help. And you may know that the reality is quite different, but you have to work with the senior where they are, and you got to bring them along an inch at a time. So I thought, well, if the senior I was caring for said to me, when I need your help, I'll let you know, I would say, do you have a power of attorney? Because that is your first line of defense. And if the senior said no, then that's what I would want to have in my arsenal. Power of attorney is a document that allows you to make decisions for another person. You are the agent, and the other person would be your principal. Power of attorney can be activated immediately or upon the occurrence of an event, such as an illness or an incapacity. When you accept the role of serving as an agent under a power of attorney, you become a fiduciary. Fiduciary is a person who stands in a position of confidence and trust to another person and is supposed to manage that person's affairs with perfect loyalty and perfect accounting and without any conflict of interest. If you have a senior who is refusing to sign a power of attorney, then in many cases you will have no option but to seek a court-established guardianship. Because if the senior isn't going to willingly give another person the authority to act for him or her, at some point someone will need to step in and help. Can't do it unless you have the proper authorization that comes either from a power of attorney. If you're married, you can do some things for your spouse, or you would need a court-supervised guardianship. The last myth in the book is one that we decided to discuss, and there are 3 myths in between. I hope that you'll read them all. But this is one that I hear all the time from people. They say, I don't need a will. Washington is a community property state, so people are under the impression that they can just die and the family, as they say, will sort it out. The problem with that, and I'm going to ask you not to look at the slide right away, but to listen to me. The problem with that is that people who die without a will are leaving their families in chaos. If you do look at the slide, you'll notice that the first issue there does not relate to what we're talking about. But when people say they don't want to do any estate planning, they are longing for these good old days. They want things to pass by a handshake. They resent the amount of paperwork and computer time that they have to involve themselves in. They want to just go back to a day that was simpler. They have desires that they want to honor, and some of those may be challenging for them. There may be guilt involved. Maybe more money was spent on one child's education, or money was gifted to a child to build a home. And parents can be afraid of raising those long-gone issues. There's concern that it will erupt into family infighting. But the problem is, if you don't address those issues during life, what kind of burdens are you placing on your family at the point of your death? Now, this slide is wrong, and so let me just explain to you what the hard issues would be. If you die without a will, the state has a plan for you. I don't know about anybody listening to the webinar, but most people I know don't believe that a state government should do their estate planning. If you die without a will, your estate will be more expensive to administer because your executor will be required to seek court authority for the actions that it takes. If you die without will, you haven't identified who should be the manager or the executor, so somebody is going to have to make that choice, and it may be that people are at odds over who should manage. So now you've got a problem before you even get the estate open, and that problem will be solved by a court. So failing to address the situation in which you are, whether you're losing your balance or you've got a diagnosis of illness, refusing to make a decision and to take action is taking action. It is limiting your options, and it is increasing the cost of whatever you try to do. Oh, I'm sorry, and there are the resources for the caregiver. And again, All of these legal definitions are included in the glossary in the book, and the specific steps that we think a caregiver could take are included in these resources, which follow the reality, the myth and the reality in each chapter.
So let me conclude. We began by saying, you know, what qualified us to write the book. We thought at the end of it we should say why the book is needed. And that's very clear. It is clear to us that many seniors are either unable or unwilling to face their needs, their growing needs, and plan properly for them. And it makes perfect sense that if you have family members who have been properly informed, and we think our book will do that, can, we say, intervene, take positive action on behalf of the aging parent or parents. The book helps seniors make the right kind of choices, and we see those as practical, sustainable, and safe. We give some guidelines in the book on how to assess the situation that each of the seniors is facing, and guidelines also as to what to do about them, and we provide tools and options so that the caregiver can take action. And we provide lots and lots of addresses for organizations around the country in every state that will provide support for you. It doesn't make any difference that we wrote the book in the state of Washington. There are many, many organizations listed that will act as a resource so that you can function and do the right kind of a job no matter where you are. So that's the end of our talk, and I guess we're open now to...
Yeah, and one thing that
yeah, go ahead.
if anybody has any questions, certainly please use the Q&A button there, but you mentioned the book a few times, and I do want to provide the book for everyone that has registered. So we do have your email. We will be contacting you to get the mailing instructions to send you a copy of this wonderful book. One of the funny things was I met Barb in an elevator, and the book was sticking out the side of her purse, and I said, "What's that?" And so it's a great book. I think it took me about 3 hours to read. But yeah, so we would thank you so much for doing this with us, and we thank our listeners. If you have any questions outside of using the question here, you can always email me at jonas@cutler.com or visit our webpage at www.cutler.com. We will be putting this presentation on our social media pages, YouTube, and while you're on YouTube, you can look up Quiz Kids, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And we really appreciate it. So if there's no questions, we'll go ahead and call it a day, and everybody have a wonderful week.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.